I think a conversation I kept on seeing in the narrative following the Me Too movement was men saying, this means that we can't flirt with women, we can't ask to buy a woman a drink. And well, for me, I think one of the questions a lot of people were asking was, where's the line? Where can we draw the line to where women feel safe and where we can still have male-female relationships? And I think a big one for me in like these situations where in bars or clubs is that if a man was to ask a woman to buy her a drink and she was to say no, that's the end of the conversation.
Yeah.
I think a lot of these things that men's egos can be so fragile and small is that they can't take that action.
Yeah.
And so they keep pushing it. And I think a lot of these cases that you're speaking about, what we're dealing with is unhealthy and weak, fragile men. I think we always speak about men being physically more powerful, but the fact that they have to resort to these sorts of horrible acts is weak-minded. So I suppose my question is, like, where do you think the line is for that sort of behaviour? Is that acceptable behaviour in bars, for example, to ask a woman to buy a drink or to try and flirt, stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, sometimes I don't even believe half of the time when I hear men say, oh, we don't know if we're allowed to do this or that. I just think, really? I think most men understand the difference between flirting and, offering to buy somebody a drink. They know where the line is and where that then borders into harassment and aggression. And I've seen this many, many times that, if you do say, no, thank you, I don't want a drink or whatever, some men become quite aggressive about that and, will start to be verbally abusive to the woman and offended by it. And I just think, well, there's absolutely no need, for that to happen. And I think most men are absolutely aware of where the line is. And they choose to cross it. And by saying, oh, we're not sure what we can do and what we can't do, I don't believe it. I think it's very clear. And it's about having respect for somebody, that's all. And it's about consent. And if you don't understand that, then you probably shouldn't be leaving the house.
I think it's staying on that theme. Another thing that a lot of men do is catcalling women. And I found my partner said something very interesting where if she's walking herself, she'll get catcalled a lot. Like she'll quite a few times she's came back and said builders catcalled me and I hate it. But there's never been a time when I've been with her walking down the road and someone's catcalled her. And what she said about that, which I just thought was great, was that it's because they respect you enough not to do that. They don't respect me enough not to do that. And that's it's so poignant to the whole situation.
Yeah, and I think it's quite a recent conversation that we've started to have about things like that. People will say, well, most people will agree that domestic abuse, for example, and violence against women is wrong, but it doesn't come from nowhere. And I think that all of these smaller things, like the catcalling, etc., they do have an impact on women, and not just an impact on women as in, perhaps they don't feel very safe walking down the road, etc. But it also makes men feel that that's okay, and other men to think that, well, yeah, that is okay. That's how you can talk to women. They aren't really our equals. They are there for our entertainment. And I think it's only very recent that we've had that conversation, and these are all the smaller things that we need to change. And actually, when you look at it as well, we always talk about builders in this respect. It could be anyone, but quite often they're doing that to 13 and 14-year-old girls as well, and they think that that's okay as well. And again, it's only very recently that I think people have started to discuss it and started to accept that really it's not good enough and we need to change these small things. But that doesn't mean that we're living in a society where you aren't allowed to think that somebody's attractive or ask them out. It's just about having respect, you know, for women. And I know a male friend of mine said it was only recently when I thought about walking home and a woman kind of walking home from the pub on her own or whatever, and being told that, you know, virtually every woman you speak to in that situation will have some kind of plan in her head. Right, if I get approached by somebody, this is what I'm going to do. It's either, you know, you've got your keys, you know, in your fist kind of thing as some ridiculous kind of weapon, or right, I've got my mobile here, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And you're constantly looking at, right, I can go there, I can do this. And men rarely think like that. I remember my male friend saying, I have never thought about anything like that, about when I've been walking home from the pub. It's never crossed my mind. And I think sometimes men don't realise the impact that all of those smaller things like catcalling, etc., when all of this is happening at the same time as women opening the newspaper and it being somewhere on page 20, a tiny little piece that another woman's been murdered. You know, it doesn't even make the front pages. It's so common. All of this, I think, plays into that culture of fear. So it's about acknowledging the impact that behaviour has on women. And unless we tackle the small things, then we're never going to have a chance with the bigger ones.
Mm-hmm. A few things came to my mind there when you were speaking there. For one, when say if I'm walking home in the dark or something like that, like the only time that I would feel that sort of maybe pressure or danger is if another group of males are walking towards me and it's in a dark street. But my worry is never anything to do with sexual assault, and it's never that I'm going to be murdered. It's like the worst case scenario, I'm going to get beat up, I'm going to get robbed.